In this Borderlands 4 video, guys, we're going to be going over the next Vault Hunter on our list, and that is Harlowe the Gravatar. We're going to go over all the passives, augments, capstone abilities, and the different skill trees, so that way you have a better knowledge of what to do with Harlowe when the game releases in just a few days. Guys, we are almost here. I can taste it. Just a quick reminder, also, we are doing a giveaway for this title. We are doing a giveaway on launch day and also giving out 2 more copies within release of the game. If you guys want to have a chance to enter to win a copy of Borderlands 4, all you got to do is drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to comment LDG down in the comments below. And also, guys, if you want to save 20% off your next G Fuel order, we do have an affiliation link with G Fuel. All those are down in the links down in the description below. And we'd love to have you join our Discord as well, as we're going to talk about all sorts of Borderlands. And we also talk about other games as well. And we'd love to have you join. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into the video. All right, so like I said, we're going to be going over Harlowe. I'm not going to go in depth with all the basic stuff. I do have a video up on my channel going over all of the different Vault Hunters and what their bases are, if you want to check that out. But we are going to start with the first skill tree, which is the Chroma Accelerator, which is the creative bursts. So what the Chroma Accelerator is it fires an unstable energy pocket from Harlowe's Chroma Accelerator. The unstable energy pocket passes through enemies and also deals cryo damage and to all enemies it passes near. Pressing the skill button causes the unstable energy pocket to explode and deal heavy radiation damage in a large area. So moving on to the first line, we have the 3 passives. We have Cyclotron, which Harlowe gains increased fire rate. We have PPE, which Harlowe gains increased maximum shield capacity and shield recharge rate. We also have Field Ready Prototype, with Harlowe gains increased action skill damage. Moving on to the second line, we have Bleeding Edge passive, which Harlowe gains increased reload speed. We have our first augment, which is Void Star, which whenever Harlowe unstable energy pocket passes by an enemy, it loses a portion of its current total health and it becomes frozen. Then we have Neutron Capture, which all damage Harlowe's unstable energy pocket deals to enemies is stored. Whenever it explodes, a portion of the stored damage is transferred to Harlowe's gun, causing her to deal bonus radiation damage. Then we have Elementary, which is Harlowe gains increased elemental damage and status effect damage. Moving on to the third line, we have Test Subjects. Whenever Harlowe applies a status effect to an enemy, she gains increased action skill cooldown rate. Then we have Get Up and Go, which whenever Harlowe activates or retriggers an action skill, she gains increased movement speed. Then we have Elephant's Foot, which whenever Harlowe's shield breaks, she deals radiation damage to all entangled enemies. Harlowe gains overshield equal to the amount of damage dealt this way. If you guys don't know what Entangled is part of her trait, which is her unique trait, which whenever Harlowe uses her action skill on enemies, these enemies become entangled. And it explains Entangled means that enemies share a portion of gun damage and skill damage with all other entangled enemies. So it's kind of like putting like a debuff on them, and they share damage between each other. So just to give you guys a little bit of a visual about that. All right, moving on, we got Great Red Dot, which Harlowe gains increased status effect duration. And then we have Enriched, which is a passive which requires a point in Elementary, which Harlowe gains increased radiation damage. Then we have Branch 1. For Branch 1, we have Practical Applications, which Harlowe gains increased skill damage. Then we had the first augment for Branch 1, which is Field Research. Whenever Harlowe kills an enemy with her unstable energy pocket, and when she kills an entangled enemy while her unstable energy pocket is active, it refunds a portion of her next action skill cooldown. Then we have Carry the One, which whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she gains a chance to entangle another nearby enemy. Course Sample, Harlowe gains lifesteal against frozen enemies. If she's at full health, she gains an overshield. Then we have Break the Ice, which convert all Chroma Accelerator damage to cryo damage. And then for the final line, we have Opposing Force passive, which whenever Harlowe freezes an enemy, she gains increased action skill cooldown rate. This effect can also stack. Then we have the first capstone ability, which is Cue Ball, which Harlowe's unstable energy pocket bounces as it travels and can no longer be manually detonated. Each time it bounces, it creates a radiation explosion. Whenever it strikes an enemy, it changes direction and bounces towards another enemy. Then for the final passive on this branch, we have Cold Welding, which is a passive which requires a point and carry the 1, which is the one up here. Whenever Harlowe freezes an entangled enemy, it deals cryo damage to itself and all other entangled enemies. Moving on to branch 2, we have Poison Sun. Harlowe gains increased radiation damage and irradiation chance, which I believe is the chance to become radiation, I believe. Then moving on to the first augment for branch 2, which is Special Purpose Magnets. Harlowe's unstable energy pocket pulls enemies along as it passes by, and its detonation deals increased damage for every enemy it has already hit. Then we have Glow Up, which Harlowe gains increased critical hit chance with guns against irradiated enemies. Moving on to the second line of branch 2, we have Fissile Launcher, which whenever Harlowe damages an irradiated enemy or an entangled enemy, shoot a radiation dart at another enemy. Then we have Chain Reactor, which Harlowe deals bonus radiation damage to entangled enemies. Moving on to the third line of branch 2, we have Wasted Passive, which is a kill skill, which killing an irradiated enemy or killing an enemy with radiation damage leaves behind a radiation hazard. Then we have the Capstone ability, which is Demon Core. As Harlowe's unstable energy pocket travels, it shoots radiation darts at enemies. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy while her action skill is active, automatically irradiate that enemy. Then we have Dirty Bomb, which whenever Harlowe irradiates an enemy, create a radiation explosion on that enemy. And then moving on to the final branch, we have Highly Efficient Passive, which is a kill skill, which whenever Harlowe kills an enemy with a skill, restore a portion of her shield capacity. Then moving on to the augment, which is Containment Breach. Whenever Harlowe's unstable energy pocket detonates, it splits into several smaller, fast-moving unstable energy pockets. Then we have Mechanical Brilliance, which whenever Harlowe damages an enemy with a skill, she gains increased skill damage. This can also stack. Then we have Eureka for the second line of passives. Whenever Harlowe enters Fight for Your Life, she throws a free unstable energy pocket at a nearby enemy, if there is any. Then we have Rounding Up. For every enemy her action skill damages, Harlowe gains increased gun damage when her action skill ends. This effect can also stack. And then moving on to the final line of branch 3, Alternative Fuel Source. Whenever Harlowe activates Chroma Accelerator, drain her shield and amp her next unstable energy pocket. Then we have the Shattering Light Capstone, which is a charge skill. Chroma Accelerator gains charges as Harlowe keeps it ready for the duration of Chroma Accelerator, or until all charges are used. Holding the skill button ends the Shattering Light early and refunds a portion of the cooldown for every charge remaining. Pressing the action skill fires a fast-moving unstable energy pocket, consuming a charge. Then we have QED, which is Melee Override. Harlowe attaches an unstable energy pocket to her fist and slams it into an enemy in front of her. All right, so that's for her Chroma Accelerator. Moving on to the second skill tree, which is the 0 point, which is the Seize of the Day skill tree. When you press the action skill, it uses Harlowe's Halo Accelerator to place an enemy in stasis for a duration. Enemies immune to stasis take damage instead, so probably like bosses. Pressing action skill again causes the enemy in stasis to be slammed into the ground in the direction Harlowe is facing, and it also creates a small explosion. Re-triggering stasis has a cooldown. So moving on to the first line of passives, we have Quantum Immortality, which whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she gains health regen. Then we have Parallel Circuit. After triggering or re-triggering an action skill, Harlowe gains increased gun damage. Then we have Pulse Drive, which Harlowe gains increased action skill cooldown rate. And then Make Extraordinary, which Harlowe gains a critical hit chance with all skills. This chance increases every time Harlowe entangles an enemy, and this effect can also stack. Moving on to the second line, the first passive here, we have Bright Future, which whenever Harlowe triggers or re-triggers an action skill, she gains increased fire rate. Then the first augment is Strange Attractor, which whenever Harlowe shoots an enemy with a gun, bullets ricochet off of that enemy onto all enemies in stasis. If Harlowe critically hits an enemy, that enemy becomes entangled. Then we have Negative Entropy, which Harlowe, or Entropy, however you say that. Harlowe gains increased gun handling. This bonus is doubled while the enemy is in stasis. Then we have Peer Review Augment, which whenever an enemy enters stasis, spawn a homing rejuvenating projectile that targets Harlowe or her allies once the enemy is slammed, killed, or the stasis ends. The rejuvenating projectile grants decreased action skill duration rate and increased action skill cooldown rate for a duration. If the target is in Fight for Your Life, they immediately gain second win as if they killed that enemy. And then we have the periodic table flip, which Harlowe gains increased elemental damage, status effect of application chance, and cryo effectiveness. And then for the final line, we have Ripple Effect passive, which is a kill skill, which whenever Harlowe kills an entangled enemy, automatically entangle another enemy nearby. Then we have 2 Coolant for Schoolant, which whenever Harlowe deals cryo damage, gain increased action skill cooldown rate. And then we have Cryodynamics, which is a passive which requires a point in a periodic table flip, which you gain increased cryo damage. Alrighty. Moving on to branch 1, we have Concurrence, which is a passive. Harlowe gains increased action skill duration for every entangled enemy. Then we have Wildcat Destabilization Augment, which entangled enemies take bonus radiation damage from entangle. Whenever Harlowe deals radiation gun damage to an enemy, it restores her action skill duration. And whenever Harlowe kills an enemy in stasis, it creates a Radiation Nova. This Radiation Nova deals damage based on remaining action skill duration. Then we have Force of Will, which whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, dazes that enemy. Dazed enemies have decreased movement speed and attack speed. Daze can also stack. So Daze is another kind of like debuff that you could put on the enemies. So moving on to the second line, we have Control Group, which is a kill skill, which killing an entangled enemy restores a portion of Harlowe's action skill cooldown and action skill duration. Then we have Slingshot, which requires a point in Force of Will, which probably has something to do with Daze, which whenever Harlowe dazes an enemy, she also entangles them, and then she gains increased movement speed. Then we have Freeze Frame. Harlowe's guns deal bonus cryo damage for every enemy she has in stasis, and it can also stack. Then we have Falling Bodies, which is the first capstone ability for branch 1, which pressing the action skill places an additional enemy in stasis at the cost of action skill duration. When the stasis ends, automatically slam all enemies straight down. And then we have Stunlock, which whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, she briefly puts that enemy into stasis. This form of stasis lasts for a short duration or until the enemy is shot again. Alright, moving on to branch 2, we have Unstable Isotope, which is a kill skill which Harlowe deals bonus cryo damage with all sources. Then we have Cold Storage Augment, which all damage dealt to enemies in stasis is stored whenever an enemy is slammed or stasis ends. Create a cryo explosion based on all stored damage and centered on that enemy, and also automatically freeze other enemies nearby. Then we have Keep Ice on That, which all cryo damage Harlowe deals gains lifesteal. If Harlowe's health is full, she also gains overshield. For the second line of branch 2, we have Endothermic Reaction, which whenever Harlowe freezes an enemy, create an endothermic aura that deals constant cryo damage to enemies around it. Harlowe's endothermic aura deals increased damage based on her overshield. The more full it is, the greater the bonus. Then we have Flash Freeze, which whenever Harlowe deals cryo damage with an action skill, she gains a chance to freeze that enemy. Then we have Heat Sink, which whenever Harlowe freezes an enemy, she gains increased action skill cooldown rate. And for the final line of branch 2, we have Triple Point, which whenever Harlowe deals non-cryo damage to an entangled enemy, she deals bonus cryo damage to that enemy. If she deals cryo damage to an entangled enemy, she deals increased bonus damage. And then we have Cold Plunge, which is the capstone ability here, which whenever Harlowe slams an enemy, creates a singularity on that enemy followed by a cryo explosion. Moving on to branch 3, we have Indiscreet Math, which Harlowe gains increased splash damage. Then we have Inertia Augment. Whenever an enemy Harlowe has in stasis dies, a new enemy is automatically added to the stasis. When this happens, Harlowe's action skill duration resets, however, it drains quicker. Then we have Experimentation, which is a kill skill, which killing an entangled enemy causes an elemental explosion on all other entangled enemies. For the second line of branch 3, we have Domino Effect. Whenever Harlowe deals splash damage to an entangled enemy, she gains a chance to trigger entangled damage share again. Then we have Sustained Reaction, which is also a kill skill. Killing an entangled enemy restores a portion of Harlowe's action skill duration. And then for the final line of branch 3, we have Ground State, which is the capstone ability, which every time Harlowe slams an enemy, gain increased slam damage and slam damage radius. Enemies in stasis take decreased damage, and also pressing the action skill to slam all enemies in stasis straight down. And then we have Gordian Knot, which requires a point in Experimentation, which is the one up here, which is a kill skill. Whenever Harlowe kills an entangled enemy, she gains a chance to instantly fully restore her action skill. And then moving on to her final skill tree, which is Cosmic Brilliance, which is her flux generator, which that allows Harlowe to throw her flux generator in front of her, which projects an energy field. It dealing cryo damage over time and also entangles enemies. Allies inside the energy field gain overshield, pressing the action skill to pick it up and toss it again. So it's kind of like as you can see in the video here, kind of like just pushing, and you can help your allies and also deal cryo damage as you're pushing like towards an objective or clearing out a camp or whatever you're doing there. They're really good there. All right, first line of this skill tree, Main's Hum, which is a passive. Harlowe gains increased maximum shield capacity and increased maximum overshield capacity. Personal Observation. Harlowe deals increased melee damage, and her melee attacks gain a chance to entangle enemies. Action at a distance. Whenever Harlowe applies a status effect to an enemy, she gains a chance to apply that status effect to each entangled enemy. Momentum, which whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she and her allies deal increased crit hit damage. Moving on to the second line, we have Mass Function. Harlowe and her allies gain increased reload speed for every entangled enemy. And then we have the first augment, which is Coronal Mass Ejection. Enemies inside Harlowe's flux generator lose all elemental resistances. Harlowe and her allies inside her flux generator gain increased status effect chance. Then we have Neutron Decay. Whenever Harlowe irradiates an enemy, she gains increased gun damage. This effect can also stack. The second augment, we have Blue Giant, which Harlowe's flux generator gains increased radius. Additionally, whenever she retrieves flux generator, she creates a cryo hazard where her flux generator was located. And then we have Radiation Hazard. Wherever she next places her flux generator, only one of each of these hazards may be active at a time. Then we have Heat Death, which Harlowe gains increased cryo efficiency, which means like you can freeze enemies a lot quicker. Then for the final line, we have Creative Overflow, which Harlowe deals increased gun damage based on her overshield. Of course, the more overshield she has, the bigger it is. Then we have Resonance Cascade, which requires a point in Neutron Decay, which is the one right here. Whenever Harlowe deals radiation damage to an enemy, she gains increased action skill damage, and it can also stack. Then we have Confirmative Reality, which is whenever Harlowe shoots an entangled enemy, she and all allies restore a portion of their action skill cooldown. And then we have Absolute Zero, which whenever Harlowe freezes an enemy, she receives a stack of 0 point. For every stack of 0 point, her action skill duration freezes enemies for a short time. All right, moving on to the branch 1, line 1, we have blue shift, which while her action skill is cooling down, Harlowe deals bonus cryo damage with her melee. While her action skill is active, she deals bonus radiation damage with her melee. Then we have Unified Theory, which Harlow's flux generator gains increased action skill damage. This effect is increased based on how many allies and enemies are inside of her flux generator. Decoherence. Harlowe deals increased damage with all sources to entangled enemies. Enemies inside of her flux generator take further increased damage. For second line of branch 1, we have Latent Charge. Harlowe deals bonus damage with guns, melee attacks, and action skills while she has her overshield. Of course, the bigger the shield, the bigger the bonus. Then we had Feedback Loop. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she gains increased action skill damage, action skill duration, and action skill cooldown rate. And it can also stack. For the final line, we have the Capstone ability, which is Potential Transference, which is a charge skill, which whenever Harlowe relocates her flux generator, it teleports to a location in her crosshairs, consuming a charge and creating a shock burst that deals shock damage to enemies inside it, grants a free second wind to allies, and heals allies within the flux generator. Runaway Reaction. For the passive, Harlowe gains increased status effect chance. Whenever Harlowe applies a status effect to an enemy, it also becomes entangled. Moving on to branch 2, we have Gamma Ray Burst, which is a passive. Whenever Harlowe re-triggers her action skill, the next shot fired from her gun drains her shield and deals bonus radiation damage based on the amount drained. Then we have Nuclear Winter for the augment of branch 2, which whenever Harlowe and her allies are inside the flux generator's radius, they deal bonus cryo damage. Whenever Harlowe and her allies leave the flux generator's radius, they instead deal bonus radiation damage for a duration. Whenever Harlowe inflicts cryo or radiation status effects, that enemy becomes entangled. Then we have Harlowe's Certainty Principle, which Harlowe gains increased gun handling, which is further increased with every enemy in her flux generator. Moving on to line 2 of branch 2, we have Jaunt, which press and hold the melee to make Harlowe swap places with her flux generator. Then we have Critical Funding, which is a passive, requires a point in Harlowe's Certainty Principle. Whenever Harlowe critically hits an enemy, she gains a chance to entangle it and refills a portion of her gun's magazine. Then for the third line, we have Exposed Core, which requires a point in Gamma Ray Burst, which is the one up here. While her shield is down, Harlowe gains increased status effect chance. Then for the Capstone ability, Violent Horizon, Harlowe's flux generator occasionally shoots radiation projectiles at nearby enemies outside of its radius. If these projectiles irradiate an enemy, the flux generator then drags them into its radius. Retrigger. Harlowe's flux generator creates a singularity burst that drags in nearby enemies and increases the action skill power. Then we have Meltdown. Harlowe's critical hits with guns deal bonus radiation damage. Moving on to the final branch, guys, we have line 1, passive Refraction. Harlowe and her allies gain ricochet chance against entangled enemies. Critical hits doubles this chance and ricochets have reduced damage. Perpetual Engine for the augment. When Harlowe activates her flux generator, she gains damage reduction and increased action skill duration for each entangled enemy and each additional enemy she entangles while her action skill is active. Then we have Excited State passive, which Harlowe gains increased critical hit damage, and whenever an enemy is damaged by Harlowe's action skill, the next shot on that enemy will automatically be a critical hit. Then we have Accretion. Harlowe and her allies gain lifesteal against entangled enemies. Distribution Function passive. Whenever Harlowe's action skill damages an enemy, restore a portion of her and all allies' shield capacity. If their shields are full, they gain an overshield instead. Then for the final line of branch 3, we have Pencils Down passive. which, while Harlowe's action skill is cooling down, she grants herself and her allies increased reload speed and fire rate. Then we have Group Study Capstone ability, which Harlowe spawns a Halo sidekick for each ally instead of her own flux generator. Halo sidekicks automatically fly to each ally and hover near them, granting them increased gun damage, fire rate, and reload speed. If you do an action skill retrigger, overload Harlowe's Halo sidekicks to increase their effects. This effect also stacks, and while overloaded, Harlowe's action skill duration drains faster. And then finally, the passive Annihilation, which Harlowe's flux generator occasionally throws grenades. If Harlowe or her allies are inside the flux generator and have a grenade equipped, it throws a copy of that grenade instead. And that wraps up Harlowe the Gravatar, guys. Again, we are so close to release here, guys. I'm trying to hurry up and get these character skill guides out before we jump right in and start getting into builds and all sorts of tips, tricks, guides here, man. Again, guys, if you guys want to enter for the giveaway, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, guys, and make sure to comment down below LDG for your chance to win a free copy. And we're also giving out additional copies as we continue to stream Borderlands 4 throughout the week, so stay tuned for that. And we got plenty of Borderlands content coming your way, guys. I can't wait to play this game. So that's going to be it from us. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Deuces.